Nice. Perfect.
All right.
Hell yeah. So, David Hedges, welcome to the pod. New owner of the WURL FKT.
Yeah, so
It's
first question, what does WURL stand for?
Whirl. Well, thanks for having me on. Whirl is the what? Actually, it's controversial whether it's the or just no the, just a.
Hmm.
I don't know. I guess it is the, but like in the title, the Wasatch Ultimate Ridge Link Up is what it stands for.
Are you a the WURL or just WURL person?
I like the way the whirl sounds, but I think I don't think it. I mean, there's like the Wasatch is like kind of big, and the Ridge link up isn't that big. You know, you could do a bigger link up. Like you could do a more ultimate Ridge link up.
Sure.
that's
For
true.
Has been done actually. Yeah.
Interesting. And technically, wouldn't it, if you're gonna add the on the front, wouldn't it then be twirl? Yeah, sorry, that wasn't a good
Oh,
joke.
right. You're right. Yeah.
it would. No, that'd be that's kind of sick.
Um, so the first thing that strikes me about the whirl, looking at it from just a stats perspective, is how much ludicrous vert there is. It's like almost 600 feet of vert per mile for 36 miles. I was talking to Jack about this route a little bit, and my question for him, like you've spent a lot of time in the whites, right? And my question for him was, okay, this route has more vert than something like the Hut Traverse, obviously, but the mile, like if you just look at the raw like splits on the record, it's like the paces on the Hut Traverse versus the Whirl, there's like a 10-minute per mile difference. And so even though there's a lot more vert, I I have to think that there's insane technicality on the Whirl. Can you speak to like sort of the terrain of the Whirl and what makes it so difficult?
Oh, because the whirl's like 2.5 miles per hour, and
Yeah, it's like I think the
right.
like your time on the Whirl was around like what 23 minutes per mile and Jack's Hut
Yeah.
Traverse is like 13 minutes per mile, but they're like obviously not comparable routes, right? So it's like
Yeah. I mean, on I was also thinking about it compared to Nolan's because I think actually Whirl is slower than Nolan's, but it's,
mm,
roughly a little over the third the length.
mhm.
Although
It's crazy.
almost half the vert, so and that's at 3,000 feet higher elevation on average at least. Yeah. I mean it's one of the few sort of like um like well-known FKTs that does include fifth class terrain. I mean, a lot of fourth and fifth. It's like the way like I've done plenty of scrambling, but I actually was comfortable racing it just because I don't think there's much like, yeah, there's fifth class, but it's not super exposed fifth class.
Mhm.
So I was never like, I mean, in training, I was like kind of scared here and there, but I was never gripped enough during the attempt to really slow me down. But yeah, I mean, compared to the whites, it's just a totally different style. Like there's a lot of granite and stuff, but otherwise it's pretty different.
Hmm.
Yeah, the pictures are pretty epic, but
Yeah.
I like when when we were looking at your Strava activity, like I mean, it looks gorgeous and it looks like terrifying because like that ridge looks so narrow in some spots. Is that like actually how it is, or is that just how it looks like from the drone pics?
Um, it kind of is. That is kind
No, it is.
of,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
that's pretty much. Yeah. I mean, not all, definitely not all of it. And you can actually open up for a fair amount. Maybe a third altogether of the total, I don't know, distance or time. I'm not sure. But like, yeah, you can open up for some of it.
Mhm.
And you don't always have to be on guard, but I definitely think that from like an effort distribution wise, the mental side was like a very big component.
Sure. Um, Maybe we can back up a sec. Like,
Yeah.
what made you what made you interested in this project? Like, how did this fit in with like your overall goals?
Yeah, there wasn't it wasn't like I mean, it's like it's been on my radar for, 4 or 5 years or something, but it was one of those where I just was, assumed I leave it to folks in Salt Lake and a couple of my friends in Salt Lake at that. Um, but like the this year and last year I ended up like um stopping through Salt Lake a handful of times. And so kind of like got a sense of what it was about. And it's one of these routes like if you Google it, it's like I mean, it's kind of like I don't know what's a comparison, like Barclays or something. There's like videos with, hundreds of thousands of views because so many people live just below it.
Mhm.
So it's if you ask people in Salt Lake, some people would call it like the hardest thing of all time. It's like crazy. Alex Honnold did that and which apparently he did. And other people think it's like a ridge jog. So to the point where you see people, like coming up, hiking up the trail like Ferguson Canyon or from the flip side, Bell's Canyon, and there's like not a small chance that they might be trying to do the whirl,
Mhm.
you know, prepared or not. So it's just like that accessible. Anyways, yeah, so I end up doing like a bunch of 50Ks this year, sort of like the classic mountainous 50Ks, stateside and then Trophy Okema. And like I had they were, it was a good time, but like there was nothing that I felt was truly a big performance for me or like I never got 100% out of myself at any of those. And but I did like shore up a lot of my, like problems with racing basically. And so I just like yeah, um got it together for like it basically worked out and I was doing a bunch of scrambling instead of actually training for these races anyways.
Mhm.
So yeah.
A couple things. So it sounds like the whirl has like kind of made it to the general public's eye, at least in the Salt Lake area. Do you think that that's true?
It's definitely true. I mean, I think maybe this is another conversation, but I think it's interesting in our sport that like if a big name had done this, it would be like a huge deal, right?
Mhm.
Sure.
Um like if Dakota Jones, who I think may have been eyeing it actually, or like Anton, Anton did like a similar-ish route a month before and not quite as well known, LA Freeway. And it was a huge deal. Um so yeah, I don't know. It's like um it's well known for the right I don't know. It's like notorious, but obviously when it's that, the notoriety is that widespread, it's not like people are keeping track of the record,
Mhm.
Yeah, necessarily.
Yeah, but like people know like the whirl concept, you know,
Yeah.
even
Oh,
if they don't
totally.
know the record. Yeah, yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
That's very cool. I feel like where Will and I are from, most people I think in Maine like don't know what the Hutch verse is. Um,
I mean, I think a lot of people know what the presidential traverse is, or at least they've heard of it.
yeah, yeah, for sure. But like,
Or Penny.
just, yeah,
Yeah.
just running like a regionally like significant route, I think is always like just very special. And so like, congratulations for doing that. And like, that's very cool.
And so I had a couple things coming off of sort of what you said. One, like off of the success of Nolan's last year, which was a huge accomplishment, what made you decide to race a bunch of 50Ks this year?
'Cause I mean, as much as I like walking around in the mountains, I just like didn't want to. Yeah, I don't love solo long runs, and I was just yeah, I kind of wanted to just have more enjoyable days out. That was it. That was the whole thing. Also, racing hundreds, I've like tried my hand at it, and it just it's like not. It's so much pressure because you've spent this huge block and you've been like over analyzing this thing for so long, and then it's like I've never had a good day at one, like a really good day, and then that's just like such a come down.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I
I
wasn't up again.
I think that's totally fair. Like when you run hundreds, it's kind of like every time you try to run one, it's like the state championship, right? And like you only get that one shot, basically. Because you can't really do anything huge before and you can't really do anything huge after.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, unless you ha I mean, see, and this is what has been all super disappointing because several times I've had bad days and just because of like race execution. So that's the other motivation for doing these 50Ks is just like how do I get on the ball and just not make dumb mistakes. I mean, even if they're not dumb, like maybe they're like more subtle. It's just like one little mistake early on and you're gonna have a bad like, have a bad race, walk it in. So I've lined up for hundreds and namely twice at UTMB and like had just atrocious experiences, but like was pretty fine, a week at like
mm,
5 days after. And that's like the most that's like the worst yeah, just mind fuck because you were like even planning on ending your season after that. But then
sure. Yeah.
there's no,
Yeah.
Uh, Go ahead, Will.
Uh, Another thing I was kind of wondering coming after it is the age-old question that we love to ask people. Finn loves to ask people that are have dipped their toes into both spaces, which is the age-old question of FKTs versus races and sort of like people versus the mountains, where or versus like you versus the mountains. Where do you fall on the spectrum of enjoying FKTs versus enjoying races, and like how do you see yourself sort of going forward? What do you plan to do more of?
yeah, I mean, it's a so, there's a thing on podcasts where everyone's like, oh, I'm a diehard competitor. And everyone's like, that just is, like, I'm not competitive. I don't care. That's why racing doesn't really, I can't really get that next gear.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, I've had very good races and like I've had a good ex time at them, but it just doesn't really especially now. I mean, I've been at it for 10 years. It doesn't really motivate me that much. And it's not like, oh, just the gun goes off and all of a sudden I'm like an animal. It's like, no, just like equally anxious and normal. So, yeah, so meanwhile though, like FKTs, I think um I just like the like uninhibited sort of freedom to it. I mean, like yeah, you can make it a big deal if you want, but it's hard to describe. But yeah, definitely I think FKTs are a lot more, I mean, sort of like challenging FKTs. That the classic like one where the challenge is great enough that you don't know if you can break it. Like that's really motivating for me, especially in like gnarly areas, not just, like a time trial.
Mhm.
But also the other part of that question is, well, is everyone like softballing the FKTs? And, are these like if you compare an FKT to a race result, is it just like 10% worse because it's like not as competitive or something? And I don't think so. Like I really don't think so. I mean, for the bigger FKTs, I really don't think so. And you see it like because I now know like I'm, know a lot of, some of the best racers in the sport, and they're not necessarily driven to do an FKT, even though there's like now bonuses for FKTs. They just
Hmm.
like it's such a different mindset for them. Maybe having more of that like D1 background, like that diehard competitor background, it's harder to actually go for it. Um, and then there's obviously plenty of people who get a lot of flack for being FKT only athletes, as you're familiar with.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think an interesting component of that um is that the schedule that a lot of pro athletes have to work with, even though there are like bonuses and stuff for FKTs now, I think a lot of sort of the higher caliber FKTs, you have to dedicate a lot of time to like knowing the route really well. I just think it's like a really heavy lift for a lot of FKTs, even if like say some of those say some of those like really good race athletes could break some of the best FKTs. Um, the difference is that like a quote unquote FKT only athlete might dedicate an entire year to optimizing one effort, right? Where a race person might have like five other things on the calendar. I think that's sort of a component that's understated is like um it's just the time component. And I don't think a lot of like you can just sort of walk into a race without knowing the course super well a lot of times, I feel like, because of the support aspect. But like if you toe the line at like one of the bigger name FKTs and you don't know the route and stuff like that, you're probably gonna get whacked on it.
Yeah. And I mean, I was thinking about this a lot this year just because at those 50Ks, I was not super close to the pointy yet. Like, I was like I got fourth at Speed Goat and fifth at the Rut and 10th at Kima, although actually as a proportion of the winner's time, I think I was most competitive at Kima, which is
Oh,
interesting.
cool.
But, if I was like 1, 2, 3% faster, I'd be, podiuming ish.
Sure.
And I just realized that like that all that would probably take I know this is like spraying really hard, but all that would probably take would be like a handful of good workouts or like that I mean, yeah, I basically didn't do. Um and I was like a little injured in the middle of the summer too, so that was preventing me from doing some intensity. But just like the training style of these I mean, and it's super obvious at these 50Ks because the performance metrics are like, okay, you have to clip off this amount of, you know, these miles at this pace. Like it's there's not a lot of moving parts. And so you just have to do like kind of boring training. And that doesn't lend itself well to like yeah, to the world. But what I was
Sure.
doing actually did. So yeah. And I was thinking about this last year too, because I lined up for UTMB 6 weeks after Nolan's. Which was a terrible idea, but it was
Great
cool
idea.
to like all the other American men like in the elite corral, they were like I didn't think any of these people knew who I was. We're all like, "Oh, nice job," just following along. I was like, "Oh, that feels great." And then a couple miles later, I was thinking, well, none of these, pro athletes just did like a 40-hour thing 6 weeks ago. Like they were spending the whole summer training for this specifically and like not being, and not sleeping at 11,300 feet all summer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting trade-offs. I have a lot of respect for you like doing both and doing both at a high level. I think that that can be really hard to do because just like Will was talking about with some of the big FKTs, people sink their whole year into doing something like the Long Trail or the Whirl or Nolan's. The same is true for exceptional athletes on the racing side. Like they'll devote their entire year to UTMB if they know that they're in. And so becomes really hard to compare because like the other thing, whether it's FKTs or racing, becomes like kind of utilitarian, like in service of that like broader goal. Um, but I want to re-emphasize the point that you made, David, which was that you don't think that the big FKTs are less competitive than the races. Just like that's a good place to be.
No, on my authority, they are not
Yeah.
uh, biased.
Swing takes.
Uh, yeah. I mean, I just think that like Jax Prezi is crazy. Like that is crazy. Like maybe three people in the world could do that, honestly.
Well, and arguably that's the reason that those kind of performances are the reasons that there's bonuses for FKTs now, right? Like the market is sort of understanding that they are competitive and, just as much as races.
Yeah, but I mean, and then the other factor though is the whole like attention economy thing. It's like there's so many objectives in our sport and races and things, and it's like these races can become a big deal if enough people with some yeah like platform, I guess, like talk like hype it up, and then other things that we're all sitting here being like this is objectively a better route just fall by the wayside.
Yeah.
um and yeah, I mean that's yeah.
All right, so should we use our platform and hype up the whirl?
No, that's all right.
I mean, it
I just mean like Prezi, that's the thing is like I don't think Jack gets the love he deserves for Prezi because even though I mean you're gonna have to ask him about it if you haven't already, but like compared to his other efforts, I think Prezi is at least as good as any of them, and some of the more sexy stuff on like international level gets more recognition, like maybe Denali or Bob Graham,
there's
but
something though
yeah,
to me there's something specific with the Prezi that it doesn't get the same coverage as other big name FKT routes, and I don't really understand why, because it is like one of the 10 premier routes, but even you could chalk it up to it being in the Northeast, but like the Long Trail gets a lot of coverage, and like the AT gets a lot of coverage. But and then like other short premier route FKTs like rim to rim to rim or like the Wonderland Trail also get a lot of coverage. It's just like for I don't really get it. Like for whatever reason, the Prezi just seems to not
well,
garner as much like national attention, and it's just strange to me.
I have a theory. Also, I'll add that the Southeast gets no attention whatsoever.
I know,
Zero.
well, to be truthfully like honest, I'm an East Coast guy, and I still like I know the Scar,
Exactly.
but
I
that's
know.
like it's like the Scar. What else is there?
Art Loeb, come on. No, there's a bunch of stuff. I mean, even when I was in living in Ithaca, it was like it's so like provincial and stuff. But my theory for why though like these Wonderland and Rim to Rim to Rim specifically actually get more attention, and you could even apply it to these other races, is just that in the golden age of our sport, like 10-ish years ago, there were YouTubes about it. And that's just like, classic repertoire for all trail runners now. Watch the Billy Yang stuff or like the Hayden Hawks, Zach Miller uh uh throwdown at North Face, or the gym. Maybe there isn't a YouTube video about gym, but obviously that's
High
well known.
profile, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe
Especially,
not specifically YouTube, but there was an age when I think the sport was like a little more sort of like centralized, and it was like when there was three channels on TV and everyone watched the same thing. I
Hmm.
think 10, 15 years ago it was sort of more unified. So,
sure, like less saturated, and so like the first movers got a lot of attention.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's an excess like demand. Yeah,
So if some like big time runner had done Prezi in 2013 and made a movie about it, I think it would be in the convo.
Sure. I buy that. I think that makes sense. I mean, even on some of the longer trails, like there was like I guess this wasn't that long ago, but there was like Joe McConaughey's documentary on the long trail, and then like back when FKT allowed it, Jeff Garmire did uh he like had a camera crew on an unsupported Colorado trail, which you couldn't do now, but like it's stuff like that. I do feel like if people can see the hike, it definitely adds a lot more eyes to it. Um,
Yeah.
it is bizarre. Like I've gone back and forth a lot on whether the popularity of FKT is just like celebrity based or route based, and it seems to there doesn't seem to be like a clear answer to that, right? Because like sometimes I feel like it is celebrity based. It's like you were talking about like if Anton goes after the LA freeway, then it's a big deal, even though like before that no one on a national level really cared about the LA freeway. But then there's also like there are there are like special efforts that sort of overcome that. Like I mean, some people knew her, but not a ton of people knew who Tara Dower was before the AT, and now everyone knows Tara Dower. So,
Right.
um,
Well, and through hikers are the best fans of FKT.
yeah, for sure.
I've experienced. So anything through hikey-ish gets like a lot of kudos. Um, yeah, beyond the running world.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I agree with that for sure. What is your background? Like, how did you come into the sport? Were you more of a runner or more of a hiker when you came in?
I mean, I was just a city kid in Chicago. I just started running a lot. That was it.
Sure.
So,
And you were like, I got to get out of the plains and find some mountains.
yeah, that's what happened. Yeah. So kind of, yeah, I don't know, a little bit of both. Like I don't have a traditional running background, but also I don't have like a, frolicking in the woods background. Yeah.
When did you like pick it up though?
Um,
Running?
2014, 2013. Yeah, 14.
Okay,
So
cool.
15, 14, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe
nice.
around there in high school at some point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so you said non-traditional running background, so I assume that means like no like track in high school.
No, I did 2 years of cross country in college.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. And then you just went after huge miles instead of 8Ks.
Yeah, I was doing huge miles in high school. I ran almost like 5,000 miles in 2015.
Oh my God.
Yeesh.
It was, I mean, flat mostly, so, but pretty excessive. But yeah, I mean, in college, even for cross country, I think I did like 1,700-mile weeks in a row during cross country season. And with like some hills and stuff in there. And I actually improved that year. I was like I actually won most improved runner of the year, which is shocking. Yeah. Very proud.
Do you still like subscribe to like a very high volume training plan? Or did you just lay the base and now you can kind of hone in on speed?
I'm just not like caught up with it anymore. Like now, and also I'm more hours based, which I think is a lot healthier.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just like weird psychological stuff, honestly. I think it's like unhealthy. It's really not like conducive to anything positive in one's life or training. But yeah, I mean, I think I can like reap some of the benefits. I mean, I basically like made it through,
Mhm.
which a lot of people who weren't in high school can't even say from that era. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is like if you get out of like that big of an aerobic base training like phase of your life without like chronic stress injuries, it will serve you, even if it wasn't like the greatest decision at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and then like, I think it's interesting to see like I had like various jumps over the last 10 years and so a lot of that is just like um has nothing to do with training, has just like I gained 10 pounds or something,
Mhm.
Mhm.
or like, you know, went to school or left school, just sort of random stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, so like picking up things or time and fitness at the margins, right? Getting stronger for a certain season, losing a stressor, things like that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hmm.
Uh, what what do you feel like defined your training like in the lead up to the whirl? Like what were you focused on most?
Well, actually, so these 50Ks and stuff were ended up, I mean, the whole year ended up being like the perfect training. So even though in January I didn't look ahead towards the world, like wasn't even I wasn't really considering it. The whole year ended up being like ideal training. Between the races, the build up, some workouts in the spring, bunch of scrambling in the summer. Stint in Italy was actually pretty useful because it's just like it was very gnarly in the Kima course. And so there were just a lot of long hours at like, very steep grades, technical footing and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I was just having a good time, honestly, this year. Like I had a great time and it just worked out. But yeah, for sure, like those 50Ks and stuff, like I mean, going back to what you're saying about like aerobic development was even though I didn't race particularly fast at those, I was able to have a noticeable fitness boost from each of them. So
Hmm.
even just like a week later, I was clearly running faster than before. And so that's why I did whirl like just over 2 weeks after the rut because
Mm,
I was like very confident that I would actually have a huge boost about that. Yeah.
interesting.
Nice. Yeah, that's interesting from a timing standpoint. Um, but if that was like your pattern all year, that totally makes sense. But that's a really nice like strategic point. Um, what like on day of, what was your plan? What was your support system? Like walk us through the infrastructure of the run.
Yeah, so I had three total Pacers and three crew members. Um, I kind of like buckled down and stayed. I actually stayed in solitude for like 10 days before, roughly. So then was able to just deal with the logistics kind of like locally and even just, go to people's houses and stuff, figure it out. I mean, also, they're my friends, so it wasn't like a extractive reason or anything. But yeah, so I just, had a group chat going with like potential helpers. And then six were able to actually show up. And I mean, basically like the key thing is that so my friends who actually live there like um on the Wasatch Front, Blaine Benitez and Jack Levitt, they're like incredibly dialed on this route. They're really strong and technically it's one of those things where there aren't many runners who could run at the pace I was doing, and them two are you know the first and second, or just call it first draft picks. So I had like ideal crew or pacers, I should say, and basically Jack Levitt did the first 4-ish hours with me, and he actually led all of it. So he found all the right lines, and we were just chatting away. And it wasn't like a giant lift fitness wise for him. So, but as a result, like I was right on pace. Like I was basically just off to a good start, and also I used almost no mental energy,
hmm
which was huge, like absolutely enormous.
Yeah, that I remember reading that in your trip report of like you didn't have to find any of the lines, and on something that technical, that must just be such a huge boost. Like not having to cook your brain trying to figure out how to not fall off the ridge and die, and you can just focus on like stepping behind this person.
Yeah, and I was really aware because I'd done some scouting. I'd seen like almost the cruxy parts like a handful of times at least. Well, I don't know, 2 to 4 times, call it. And but it's like very hard to get up to the ridge just to do a segment. So those were all long days, and I actually like you know, for better or worse, basically kind of like handicap myself for all of those by going like in the middle of the afternoon with no water. And also sometimes I like play Sudoku in my car before running to kind of get for like 20 minutes.
So this is a conscious choice to sort of like in terms of the water and cooking your brain, like you're doing that on purpose to like mimic being tired or
Yeah.
like interesting.
I also like Sudoku and I don't like to carry water, so that's part of it. But no, absolutely. So like the training runs were hard, basically, even though I mean my pace wasn't that strong, but I
hmm
was able to split in the ballpark of what I needed to on like a compromised situation. And so uh I don't know. It's like, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing any of that stuff. But it like definitely worked. I mean, because then when I was able to have pacers who knew what they were doing, were super dialed and like a bunch of nutrition, um, and just, the legs were fresh. Like I was able the percent increase of like, RPE was much better. So yeah. I mean, I'd basically done that for Nolan's too. So
That's
Sure.
awesome. That's really, really cool. And so it seemed like you were pretty much like ahead of Jason's time throughout the day, and you just like made marginal gains, like just consistently. Like there wasn't like a huge, huge breakaway spot. Is that true, or was that just like the updates that were on Instagram?
Actually, I was like a couple minutes ahead so it's like basically it's 4 hours, very, very technical. Then that's called the Cottonwood Traverse. Then it sort of opens up with like small cruxy stuff for the rest, for like a long stretch of the ridge until when I saw Jack and Anna Hidden Peak. So I guess that's 7 hours. So it's 3 hours of runnable-ish. Then uh so it's four, then three, then seven of like pretty hard again. And it was in that the middle three, if that makes sense, that I made up the most. I like
Mm,
actually put in the 30 minutes. So
Okay.
I put in like a couple minutes um on the first ridge section and then something like 25 minutes across the more runnable part and then just didn't slow down that, did was basically even with Duray on
Yeah.
the last segment, which is actually I think that's like I think it's pretty crazy that Duray would because like I didn't feel terrible. It's not like I was like barely hanging on. I always felt like I was moving okay at the end, but it's interesting that Duray like started strong and finished strong and then just didn't. I think basically he just didn't try to he was trying to be conservative.
hmm
Yeah.
Is is the end, is it is it like hard to keep your heart rate up because of the technicality, like as you're descending?
Oh, at the very end?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean kind of. It's actually the very end is pretty East Coast, is pretty New Hampshire-y, the trail.
mm,
Okay.
Well, I don't know. It's more key. I don't know. It's like it's a trail, but it's pretty tough. So it's not like there's some segment of 3 miles that you can just let loose.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. Um, and so that like middle 3 hours, like I guess what was going through your mind? Like, was it your strategy to pick up most of your time there?
Yeah, for sure. And actually I did also like run really strong past hidden for like the next hour after that. So maybe it was more like 4 hours. But yeah, that was actually the strategy.
Mhm.
I was basically just trying to treat it like a race. And I mean, I'm sure I fueled better than him and had more support out there. So I didn't stop at all at any sort of like makeshift aid stations or
mm,
uh, yeah, I was dialed. So basically, I just was able to run that middle section, like really run it and not,
Mhm.
like run the uphills, really try to open up on the downs, and yeah, and I didn't make any mistakes either. So there's a cruxy section called Devil's Castle above Alta, or is it? Yeah, above Alta, and there's like a little bit of exposure and it's a little tough and you could easily make a mistake and it's those there's a handful of examples like that if you sort of like took the wrong turn a little bit you could add 30 seconds all over the place and I just had almost none of that. So
mm.
yeah.
I think that's, speaks to your preparedness of the route. And that's like, again, back to like how you make FKTs fast is like dialing in the route and knowing it really well and not pissing away time where you don't need to. Like unforced error kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it also speaks to the caliber of your pacers.
True. No, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and Blaine helped me for so his beat out time, so that's from Pfeifferhorn to the end. is absolutely ridiculous. Like, like a lot of people have tried on these segments because they're just so obvious and they're like very cool. And so it's not, and basically his CR is like it's 20 minutes faster than the next. It's
Wow.
ridiculous. It's absolutely crazy. So it was like, yeah, another ideal pacer move. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think the other thing about like racing it versus sort of like how I approached it is, yeah, I mean, I think there's a bit of a mindset whether you have more nutrition or not or anything like that is just like, is this an adventure run or is this a race? And I think I was kind of inspired by Jack too, with, he's doing like these big projects that he's really racing, like balls to the wall, like 105%.
Mhm.
So, but I think sort of like conventionally people take more of an adventure approach, which just like psychological, I think you just don't get as much as out of yourself as you could because yeah. But I think that's going back to the conversation about, FKTs versus races and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's interesting. Like the adventure mentality, I think it's interesting because I think like not being like mentally sharp and like not thinking that everything matters at the time that it's going on, like really, really hurts. But I also think that the like adventurous sort of mentality does help people like be conservative when they need to be. And so it's like I th it can either work for you or crush you, I think. But that's true about, going balls to the wall when the gun goes off too.
Yeah, I agree. And obviously conservative is safer. So I think it just takes knowing yourself. Like probably like you guys are probably super like Will, you like had to take calculated risks,
sure.
um, knowing that it could end your trip. Um, but you just like you just have enough experience that you know like what the limit will be. And like, yeah, I think that's basically what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think knowing the limit is really important, but then after that, like I mean, I used to fight it, but I now subscribe to Jack's mentality that the end point for all of these competitive records is treating them like races. And I think the adventure mindset is a lot of fun, and that's like part of the reason why I love FKTs is that they split the difference for me between competition and adventure. But from a logistics perspective and a pacing perspective, like at some point, if you don't treat it like a race, you're not going to be able to compete anymore. And I think you know, I think that's the way things are headed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess aside from, crazy, unsupported, like if you're gonna do like the Sangre's Traverse, from like or some sort of unsupported Santa Fe to Salida, Sangre, like the that's something that I could actually see being coming competitive because it's dope, but I think there's basically no way you could treat it like a race in any.
Mm.
Yeah, you can't really even support it. I mean, for a lot of it. So there are things like that.
Yeah.
It's just like too much of a survival situation.
Yeah, like you need a helicopter.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think well, that speaks against the utility of doing races, even if you're like quote unquote A goals in FKT. Just like sharpens you up a little bit.
No, totally, totally.
Um, so how long has it been since the run?
3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yep.
Are people well, I guess you left Salt Lake, but were people recognizing you in coffee shops? That's the guy who just set the world.
Well, the coffee shop scene in Salt Lake is very interesting, actually.
I was gonna say a lot of
Oh,
them can't
right,
drink
right, yeah,
caffeine.
yeah. The
Oh,
soda
I
shop.
mean, there are actually a lot of them, and people go, but yeah, it's not what I'm used to. Yeah, I mean, I kept going. There's a like their version of Ski the Whites, it's just called Skyrun yeah, right, Skyrun or Skimo Co. I think. I hope I didn't mess that up. Yeah. But there, I kept going there for like gels and stuff. And
Hmm.
one of my pacers, Josh, works there. So I guess they recognized me in there, but I didn't get anything for free. So
Mm.
Damn it. What do we even do this for?
I know. Maybe it's coming. Yeah, no, I mean it's been I mean I was like really proud of the the result and like actually I didn't get too much post race blues, which was cool.
That's great.
Like there was no weirdness after it, so yeah, actually I think so interestingly this photographer Blake Becken, who's local to Salt Lake, just like Strava messaged me at one point saying like I get the sense that you're going after WURL. Can I take pictures? And I was like, yeah, sure. So he's the one who got all the drone stuff, all the picture, all media period was him. Well, actually, some of my pacers got some phone videos at his request, but yeah, so he's actually putting together a 5 minute video, which I may come out like tomorrow, but it's pretty cool.
Oh, let's go. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
cool. Well, this episode won't be out until Wednesday this coming week, so we'll link presuming the video comes out before then, we'll link it in the podcast show notes if people want to go watch it.
Okay, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you said that you're like very proud of this run. Not to force you to compare it with your other tremendous successes, but how does it sit in your brain?
Tremendous success. Yeah, I think it's at the top. Yeah, it's at the top. I mean, I think this is like going back to that just like competition really doesn't motivate me so much. Some of the FKTs I have done that I feel like I've given my 100% because I think that's another problem with FKTs is it's easy to sort of like get one, but you're it's 75% and that's just I mean, I've done it before I knew better, but I think that's like not I think that kind of does a disservice to FKTs as like a thing. But anyways, like some of my prouder FKTs got like aren't famous or got zero attention, but I just had like wild experiences.
Mhm.
So I still have those like high, and those are all unsupported, which also adds another element of like the just like a special experience. But yeah, I think the world's at the top from like a pure performance and satisfaction sort of metric.
Yeah, you did say in your Strava post, best day I've ever had.
I think I said
So,
in the mountains, but yeah, also yeah, also.
you actually
Uh,
did not say in the mountains, but
oh,
best day
really?
I've ever had, yeah. So
Okay, well that's
I'm
okay.
glad that holds true 3 weeks later.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. Really. Congrats. That's really fantastic.
Yeah.
But it was just like I was like I said that because I was, super in the flow state the whole time, so it was actually just objectively super fun.
Mhm.
And also physically it was my best day, performance wise. So nothing went wrong, which is pretty huge.
Yeah.
Define the flow state.
I just didn't feel like I was trying. It was just fun, like it didn't feel like a long day,
Sure.
feel hard. I wasn't, yeah. The scary parts weren't scary. It didn't feel like a lot of inertia to get the legs moving on the runnable stuff. I wasn't like nervous about anything, which is um kind of a big deal. So, yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
you're just ripping it. That's that's great. That's wicked cool. Will, do you have other stuff?
Um, so we're like, how do you see your right? You've done some big name FKTs. You race Nolans. You have now done the Whirl and spent a year doing like hard 50Ks. How do you see your trajectory as an athlete? Like, where do you see yourself? You don't have to give specific efforts if you're keeping them in the pocket, but like, where do you see yourself going from here?
Yeah, big picture wise, I think I was like very caught up with the whole pro athlete sponsorship thing, in the past. even as recently as last year, I think it was definitely on my mind more. And I've like, I sent some emails and like basically given up. Like it's not something that it's just like such a, I just can't navigate it properly, I guess, or I don't know. It's just not something that's like great right now for me. So basically I'm just like not trying to have incentives that are related to what I think is some sort of pathway to quote unquote professionalism,
Sure.
which is like very liberating. I also think though on that, like it's interesting in trail running, FKTs, mountain running stuff, that it still is so much race result based, even though, okay, so if like Western States is more similar to a road marathon than WURL is to, um, I didn't phrase that great, but like if WURL is more similar to like backcountry skiing, like when you think about backcountry skiing, it's not a race. There's no race. Like all these people
Sure.
are pro skiers or climbers, and there's no race at all. I mean, there's like here and there, but no, or surfers or something. It's like, yeah, there is some, but it's not considered a big deal at all. And I actually don't understand why there isn't more of that in our sport. Like why there isn't just project-based um professionalism based on just like doing cool stuff. I mean, I guess there is, and people are so concerned with the whole like influencer label or something, but I don't think that like dichotomy really exists in these other sports. So why is it such a huge deal for ours? But I think it would be cool if there's some model of an athlete who was I guess Anton is the closest because he does these like his main objectives for the year are these big trips that he then writes about and creates people really latch on to. So I think that's an interesting model, but where else go with that? Yeah. But long story short, I don't have any like professional ambitions at the moment, but I do have like various um objectives that are kind of on the radar. And then I still kind of have to decide whether I want to race at all again or try to do just like level up FKTing. Like
Hmm.
part of me wants to take a crack at Bob Graham or the GR, whatever the one is on Corsica, GR
Sure.
something, or Elks Traverse would be a lot of fun. I mean, I think Pemi would be within my wheelhouse and would be worthwhile. And like Prezi, I was on the Prezi course quite a lot this May and June, and that would be like I would retire after that, I think.
Honestly, fair.
Yeah. But it's one of those where I could see if you just live there, which
Yeah.
also I have kind of done, but like, with conditions and stuff, it's so hard to actually train. But if you live there for a summer, call it, and you got like a minute faster a week or maybe 2 minutes a month, then like I could actually see that just out of pure like efficiency, then eventually I think I could like do it.
Sure. That'd be
Yeah,
sick.
I do think that I think that your mindset about it is like correct, that like the Prezi depends so much on efficiency over the terrain.
Yeah.
But if you know the
You have
model,
to be,
you could
but you
do
have
it.
to be so powerful too.
Right.
You have to be, and I'm not sure if I can just conjure that up,
Sure.
personally. But yeah, it's crazy.
Well, we'd love to see you back east. That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I was thinking about while you were talking about sort of results-based stuff, and my initial thought on it was so I think I think it's mostly about different like how you can differentiate yourself from every other person on like in the public eye, right? And so for like surfers or backcountry skiers, I think a lot of it is that they're doing things that other people that the vast majority of the general public can't do. Whereas like a lot of people, right, a lot of people can hike the long trail, a lot of people can hike the whirl. No one like not many people can do it that fast, right? And so I think that's sort of why I think FKT is I mean, it's sort of in the name of FKT, but it's like results based because hiking isn't hard in itself, right? And so it's like what differentiates you from like hiking's walking, you know?
Dude, that's your hottest take of the whole episode.
Hiking's not hard. If you can walk, you can hike. But if I guess it's like how do you differentiate yourself? Like I think the extreme end of that is like I think there are people who sort of make a career and a living off of mountaineering, which I suppose is like the extreme end of like hiking. But it's sort of a different sport than sort of mountain running. And I just like I guess my thought is off the top of my head, I don't know how to differentiate yourself from everyone else in the world in mountain running other than being faster.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I agree with that. I think, yeah. I think there's some sort of like spectrum though, because that is also interesting if you want to dish on like alpinism or, is like you just were you basically just took the time to and had the cash to like do a giant trip and then but the actual mechanics are exactly the same.
Sure. Right.
Like that's pretty I mean that's like a hard pill to swallow, but not necessarily wrong in all, it's like you can't really say, a lot of these like huge things are, like showcasing the human condition or like human, incredible performances of just like no one has ever if it's just like a bitch to get to, and that's what's interesting about it.
Sure. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Anyway, I hope I made some enemies with that little rant right there. That would be good.
Yeah, more the merrier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The podcast needs some haters. People are
True, not enough.
people are too friendly.
Yeah.
Are they in New England? I feel like people get pretty they get into their camps about these things.
They're definitely in their camps, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
that's very true.
yeah, but we love them. It's our people. And I genuinely think that the podcast has plenty of friends in New England.
Yeah,
They,
definitely. Oh, speaking of which, like quick correction to our last episode because I got multiple messages about this. Apparently, we were incredibly ignorant about the history of the Bob Marshall Traverse. And apparently, that route has a lot of history of competition dating back to the early 1900s. And so when I think it was me who made the comment of like, "Oh, this is a newer route, not a lot of competition, go beat it down." Like, I guess I was off base with that
well,
comment.
enemies.
Is that the one that includes canoeing?
I don't think so.
Wrong.
Wrong.
We'll have to
Bring
do
it
our
on
research on that one.
later.
Yeah.
I think there
Um,
is canoeing up there, actually, but yeah, I didn't know about that before either.
God, that'd be cool.
that would be cool.
Just made some new enemies.
Uh,
True.
yeah, I don't know. Was there any votes for like Camel's Hump?
Yes.
There
Yeah.
were some. It didn't make it. There were three in Vermont: the Long Trail, the Monroe Skyline, Gap to Gap to Gap, and then the Vermont 4,000 footers. I think were the only three in Vermont.
No Worcester Traverse. Dang.
I haven't even heard of that one. What is that?
That's a David
Uh,
Henry special.
Oh,
oh,
really?
that it's just northeast of Stowe. It's like a very popular, area for Stowians, and
Sure.
it's a super cool ridge, point to point.
Cool. I have to
Yeah,
check it
highly
out.
recommend. Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
well, um, do you feel like there's anything important that we've overlooked about the world? Do you want to give a message to our mostly Northeast audience, or yeah, what do you have to say to the people? Where can they find you?
Um, I'm on the Instagram and the Stravas, and yeah, about WURL. I don't know. I think that's yeah, that about covers it. I mean, I guess the last thing, I mean, I do feel like kind of an imposter with the world because like I'm not from Utah. I don't live in Utah. I don't think I ever will live in Utah. So it was just like something fun that I did and not like a lifelong. project, which
Sure.
but I honestly feel like kind of guilty about that. Um, but yeah, I guess that's how it goes.
I get that. But it's also theoretically it should light the fire for some locals to go try to take it back, which is a good thing, you know.
Oh,
If
definitely.
they don't like that you just waltzed in and took it, then they should do something about it.
Oh, definitely. And we all are familiar with the crew, the big crew, the very famous Salt Lake. I don't know if they have a name, but Finn's friends.
I'm not at all
Who
familiar
all
with
live
them.
there. Oh, really?
No. But I
They're talked about a lot.
sure. And they
That
sound like a great crew.
yeah. hmm
Good for
Anyway,
Finn.
Yeah. Cool. Well, dude, congrats again on the run, and it's been a huge pleasure carving it up with you.
Yeah, thanks for chatting.
thanks for having me on.
All right, man. Well,
Yeah,
yeah, good luck in the upcoming weeks and months and years and in all your travels. Uh we'll yeah, we'll chat with you soon.
thanks. See ya.
See ya.